So over this weekend so far, I've been thinking about what I might talk about this morning. And in the forefront of my heart in thinking about this is all the difficulty that exists in our world, and maybe for many of you, with the COVID-19 and this virus and sheltering in place, lockdown, and the economic challenges that are either already facing some of you or many people, or probably the changes and the challenges that might be coming. So what might I say that would be useful for people who are interested in mindfulness meditation, interested in Buddhism, who are looking in this direction for support at this challenging time? And in thinking about various options, I settled on the idea of talking about the value of mindfulness of the body. And it might seem like a topic which is disconnected from the world around us and the world needs to be dealt with directly. But it's the body is the kind of the fountainhead or the source, this wellspring, out of which we can have a beneficial response to the world and a beneficial response for our own welfare. And that if we don't care for our body, the world, how we react and how we live and how we respond to the challenges of our life often get much more difficult. That it's caring for the body, we create the kind of inner life, the steadiness, the sense of well-being, the equanimity, the calm, the vitality that makes us more resilient and makes us more available to connect to the world and care for it in a way that is not so dictated by our reactivity or our stress levels or the agitations of our mind that we can get swept up in if we spend too much time with the news or worrying or ruminating about how things are. And it turns out that this is a very Buddhistic topic because at the heart or the center, or maybe I should say, maybe foundation's better, foundation of Buddhist practice, Buddhist meditation practice, is a strong grounding in your body. And I've learned that in that grounding in the body, there comes a wonderful responsivity to the world around us and to the needs in the world. That rather than a body being a retreat from the world, it becomes connecting to the body allows a more wholehearted, whole-bodied response to the world that is much wiser than many times if we're just in our mind and thinking about things. So a few things about this in Buddhism is that in the mindfulness practice, the Buddha gave a variety of different instructions for mindfulness meditation. And in all of them, they begin with mindfulness of breathing. And once we settle into the breath a bit, then he talks about becoming aware of the bodily, he calls the bodily formations. And this bodily formations are the activities of the body that are formed, that come into play, depending on what the mind is doing. So most obviously, if a person is afraid and the shoulders go up, the fear and the thoughts of fear are more the mental side of things, and the shoulders going up are a response to that mental life and that mental world. If I'm thinking thoughts of really want something and craving something, and my stomach gets a little bit tight, this tight stomach is the mental formation. If I feel just very comfortable and relaxed and safe, and I relax, then that relaxation is a relaxation of the mental formations of bracing ourselves or holding ourselves or being activated. That people can live often a whole day, days, months that way. And so to start feeling the mental formations, feeling what's active or how the body is the beginning of how we care for ourselves. The Buddha then went on to say specifically, as we continue the mindfulness practice, spend time relaxing the bodily formations, softening them. And so this kind of relaxation of the body is inherent in the practice of mindfulness. Sometimes we do it intentionally, and sometimes just becoming greater and greater aware of the body does two other things in relationship to the body. Simple awareness of it tends to relax the body by itself, even without us doing the relaxing. Also, we tend to become more aware of what we're doing that causes stress, the ways we think and hold on to things and are pushing or wanting or pulling back or resisting. And that greater familiarity with what we're doing also begins to create space and create a little bit more distance, so we're not fueling that tendency with all the mental energy that we have, and so things begin to relax as well. Anything that takes us out of the constant flow of thinking tends to create relaxation. And so every time we come back to our breathing and let go where we're thinking, stop investing in our thoughts, slowly, maybe in minuscule amounts at first, there's the energy of our body, energy of our attention goes to relaxation, to being present rather than spinning off in thought. The Buddha's instructions on concentration practice also puts a tremendous emphasis on the body. He talks about once we get really settled and unified and feeling of wholeness and connectedness and focus in the practice, there tends to well up feelings of joy, happiness, well-being that his instructions are when those good feelings start arising, when feelings of wellness begins to appear in the body through meditation, then keep doing what you're doing and allow that wellness, allow that joy or delight to spread through the body. He uses all these synonyms for this to really emphasize it. He talks about let the joy fill, saturate, and pervade the body. And so in time, as this inner well-being begins to well up within, that comes from being settled and focused and really connected to the body, the instructions are to really allow that to grow and develop and really fill you. And when it really gets strong, then he also talks about letting clarity, a clarity of attention, a clarity of mindfulness spread throughout the body. And this idea that the whole body can participate to the point where the whole body feels like lucid or clear or settled or clean is also a feeling. The body just feels not only relaxed but just clean in a wonderful way, almost like it's empty or in clarity. So this body and in order to really ground ourselves in the body, a very important thing needs to happen. And that is we need to shift the locus of our presence, locus of where we live, from our thinking to our physical embodied sense of being, the sensations, the experience here, being settled here in the body. It doesn't mean that we stop thinking automatically, but it does mean that we're no longer taking up residence in our thoughts. We take up residence in the body. If we think that thinking is where all the solutions are going to be, where all the answers are going to be, that if we just think ourselves out of problems, think ourselves to solutions, think ourselves into being entertained properly, and we kind of leave the body behind, we enter into a fragile world, a world which doesn't really nourish the well springs and depth inside, and doesn't really allow the stability, the calm, the presence, and the deeper places of empathy and connectedness to exist. More often, some of the difficulties we have with our body, certainly some of them come from our pain and illness and things that go on in the body that are quite difficult. But there's also a fair amount of degree of difficulty that we give to the body by how we think about our body. And some people have very negative relationships to their body because of they think they have the wrong kind of body. It's too big, too small, too tall, too short, too whatever. And it doesn't fit into some ideal that we think is needed to be, to fit in or be liked or something. And these ideas we have are spinning and going. We tell ourselves these ideas over and over again. Can do a little bit of pain and add pain and suffering to this body. As we learn in meditation not to live in those stories, not to live in our thinking, we start having a very different experience of our body than the experience we can have if we're up in the control tower, judging it, comparing it, criticizing it, wanting it different than it is. It's because then we're kind of experiencing the body from the outside in the sense of an image, an idea, concepts of what the body's about and what it can do for us or not do for us, versus from the inside out. Meditation is experiencing the body from the inside out, where it's the first and foremost, it's the sensations, the experience of the body that's we're dwelling in, not the thoughts and the judgments about the body. We take up residence in the body, we don't take up residence in thoughts. Thoughts are more peripheral, they have an important role, but it's not the center where we abide and stay rooted. It'd be kind of like if you are in the desert they have something called tumbleweed, that once it's gotten broken free and died, it just blows in the wind. Whatever way the wind blows, the tumbleweed just rolls across the desert. Versus being a plant that's well rooted in the soil, and like a redwood tree, is not going to bend very far in the wind. The trunk of it that's down by the ground doesn't seem to move at all. It's just solid and stable. If we stay too much in our thoughts and ideas, the slightest little wind of other people's opinions, other things happening in the world, reading the news, can blow us around quite a bit like tumbleweed. But if we are rooted in our body, then we become more like the trunk of a redwood tree. And all kinds of things can happen, but we're resilient. We kind of can go with it, or we don't move. We're not so impacted by it. And we start experiencing ourselves independent of these thoughts. Now, one of the things that I found very, very important about this meditation practice in the early years in which I practiced and ever since, is that as my thoughts, I stopped taking up residence in my thoughts, stopped automatically seeing the world only through my ideas and thoughts, that I was also then not seeing the world through the ideas that I had of myself. The various self-concepts I had, that I was this kind of person, I was this kind of person, I was a good person, I was a difficult person, I was, I had all what I should be, what I shouldn't be, what I wanted, what I didn't want, what my preferences were. And there's I had a lot of selfing going on, self-preoccupation, conceit, and it was a small little tight world, that tumble, of thoughts, ideas that I'd inherited, that I made up, that had come to me. And I was a tumbleweed to the slightest little movement and slight and statement by other people and who I was with, and I'd be kind of tossed around. As I started experiencing myself more in my body through meditation, in this world of thinking quieted down, not only was I more resilient and not tossed around so much, but a much more important thing started to happen. And that is, I discovered it was through my thoughts and ideas and concepts that I created a very strong sense of separation between self and other, almost like a barrier between self and other. And as I started, that barrier started to dissolve, then through the body and being grounded in the body, I felt a much greater kinship. It was almost like I could feel more compassion, more care, more empathy. I was able to feel and sense other people and see them in a more holistic way. I wasn't kind of pulled back and judging or afraid or living in the divide of this barrier, I was on one side concerned with myself, and they're there, and how could I, how did they fit into my self-concept? But this barrier started to fall, and I just delighted and felt so much joy in being in the world without this strong attachment and ideas of thoughts about self that I'd been carrying for so long. And so this idea of the dissolving of barriers, this dissolving of pushing away or holding on tight to some kind of armor of who I am here, was, for me, was the awakening of compassion. And one of the great benefits in my early years of meditation practice, which I wasn't anticipating, I wasn't looking for, I wasn't planning for, was how I was compassioned by the practice. And compassion started welling up from inside. The sense of care, sweet, and it was so sweet, it was so warm, it was so nourishing to feel this. And at first I was feeling it a lot through meditation practice. And so this nourishing feeling of caringness. For a while when I was in the monastery during this time, I was a gardener. I was the gardener. And I had a little problem as the gardener, was I would go in the morning to start doing my work. And I'd just been meditating, probably meditating 2 or 3 hours by that time. And so I came out of meditation to go do my work. And I wouldn't work because I had this wonderful, I called it a parental feeling for these plants. And I would just go around and look at all the plants and kind of just had this parental feeling of care, of delight, of just kind of checking in with them and seeing how they were. And I would go around the whole big garden looking at them and not work because I was doing that first. So maybe it's a little silly story, but what it represents is how this kind of caring feeling, nourishing feeling started to well up inside. When these barriers were not there, but also more importantly, when I was grounded in my body, feeling here present in my body. So what the reason I wanted to give this talk about this topic today is that mindfulness of the body has a lot of functions. It's how we can ensure we have proper self-care. We pay attention to our body, the signals from our body, where the body hurts, where the body is stressed, and then care for that, take care of that. I think for some people who are sheltered in home or in lockdown, it might be even more important to exercise and do yoga or do whatever you can to move, dance. The other day, I was feeling like I was having a little bit too much of all kinds of things. And so I went and started dancing without any music, just to kind of, or I think the neighbors would have called it dancing if they saw it. It was outside. But I was moving my body just to kind of let the energies flow and to get connected to my body and let things discharge that had built up. If you spend too much time reading news and you feel overwhelmed by it, go exercise, discharge some of it, do something. Or meditate in a way that really settles in your body and lets meditation discharge some of it and begin again. Mindfulness of the body also gives you the clues that you need to pay attention to of when we just begin to get stressed by something, begin to get overwhelmed. And if you're reading news, learning news, or something's going on in the world, and you feel like you get the early warning signs of tight belly or shoulders going up or spinning agitation feelings in the body or the mind or closing down feelings, the early warning signs maybe should be listened to. A lot of the news is not going to go away. You don't have to go to the next article and the next article. It might be better to retreat a little bit, come back into your body, settle the agitation that's built up in there until you feel settled and calm again. And then, if you think it's useful, to read the news again. So mindfulness of the body teaches us self-care. Mindfulness of the body also teaches us self-care that takes us beyond self-centeredness. Self-centeredness, self-preoccupation, itself is a form of stress. Itself is a kind of suffering, a kind of tension, a kind of distress even. And so if we really start paying attention to the body and feeling where the distress, the tension is, we'll sooner or later also notice the tension that comes with self-centeredness, self-preoccupation, how it creates a barrier, how it's a resistance, how it's a closed downness, how it's an isolation, a variety of different things you actually feel. And as the meditation settles, to have this kind of begin to dissolve, these kinds of barriers, and to have the softness, the gentleness, the tenderness of the heart available to feel and sense what's there in the world. To read the news, to find out what's going on in the world with your neighbors and friends, and do so from the tenderness of the heart. And maybe don't read news faster than the speed of that tenderness. Meaning, don't leave that tenderness behind. The place of compassion or care, the place that we can care from a heartfelt way. Not the caring that's a should and a principle idea, I should be caring, what should I do, and who should I help, and all that. But to stay in touch with the embodied place inside that comes from having a calm body, a centered body, a place of, I like the word tenderness or gentleness inside. Maybe you have words that you prefer, a sensitivity, a warmth, a sense of love or care or compassion. And to go at the speed of tenderness, the speed of the body, connectedness. Don't sacrifice that for what the mind is telling you has to be done quickly, or have to think out and get busy. The mind can operate really well and successfully to take care of a lot of things while you're taking up residence in your body. The two don't have to be separated. To actually allow you go through the world and be embodied and see how the mind participates and shares and supports what you're doing. You might experiment with this if you have time these days, especially maybe people who have spent a lot of time sheltered at home. You might do an ordinary daily domestic activity, maybe cooking or maybe cleaning, and do it from an embodied place. Maybe meditate first, really ground yourself in your body the best you can, and then stay connected to your body and see if you can stay grounded. Maybe do the activity slower than you usually do. And see if your mind can still operate to help support you to do whatever the task you have to do without needing to lose touch with the body. So, mindfulness of the body. I think of it as the great balancer. It brings us into balance. It gives us the evidence we need to have to find out how we're imbalanced. If we're too lethargic or dull, it's evidence that maybe we need to bring some energy in, maybe exercise or be active more. If you're meditating, sit up straighter. If you're over-agitated, that's a sign of maybe it's time to relax and settle. That's just two examples, but there's probably an infinite examples of little evidence, clues the body can give, that if you're paying attention to it, will point you back to balance, to stay balanced. And to begin really tuning into the body, take up residence in the body, so that the body's capacity of empathy, of caringness, of wisdom, of love, have a chance to be present, and not to be pulled into the world of thoughts and ideas and lost there, or only navigating and negotiating the world through thinking. That's a place that there's a lot of, where tension builds up, where overwhelm builds up. So do a lot of self-care, but the self-care that takes you beyond self. The self-care that allows you to become centered here in the body. And from this center, respond to the world. This body that you have is an amazing natural resource that you should have it so close by, so intimate. One of the miracles, one of the great wonders of the natural world, and that it's here for you to live with and cooperate with and care for and be cared for, is an amazing thing. Trust this body. This body is filled with understanding. This body is a wonderful partner for the mind. In fact, in classic Buddhist teachings, the body that we're trusting, the body that we're really feeling and tuning into, is an intimate partner with the mind. It's not it becomes less and less separate, the mind and the body, as we settle and get more and more centered here in the practice. And then what I'd like to leave with is this idea that this wonderful and powerful and significant act of nature, the phenomena of nature, our physical body, can be the place that we are centered. And rather than being self-centered, we become, in this world that we live, situation-centered. The center of the situation that we're in is this lived body. The dissolving of self-concern, self-preoccupation, self-centeredness can leave us very centered in this body, so we'll get the messages and knowledge about how to care for ourselves, how not to have barriers, but how to have boundaries is a modern psychological term, how to know and feel the impact and the motivations and what's going on here in an intimate and wise way so we can take care of ourselves. But so that we're situation-centered, but that situation radiates out from us, and our scope of attention can be quite wide. Actually, it can be can feel boundless, the scope of our care, from this groundedness and centeredness here in this body. Being connected to your body is not an abandonment of the world, but rather it can be the source of our care for the world. Trust your body. Take good care of your body. This is a time to really help your body stay balanced, help your body stay properly healthy, energized, and present, and your body will help you. You guys are mutual partners in this endeavor. If you care for your body will care for you, and that combination will help you care for the world. I certainly hope that this practice that we do, and Buddhism in general, helps people, makes people, transforms people into people who make a difference for the world in a good way. May we all take good care of ourselves. May we all care for others and for the whole world. Thank you very much.